Hello. Just taking you in. Nice to see you. What's it here? It's sort of the edge of summer, spring, but we have the fogs of summer coming in, which are good. They're better than the fires of autumn. So here we are. So I wanted to talk today about this great old koan that the Zen meditation came into, one of the places that came into Japan through was Kamakura, which was the time when China was kind of, falling apart again. Kamakura was the capital of Japan in the medieval period. And the great lords had their palaces there, and they needed great temples. And so they had the greatest of those temples at the time was Enkakuji, which was very beautiful, very intricately built. And the very notable master from China had kind of fled the troubles, decided to, it was good for his health and his disciples' health if they went to Japan. So he went to Japan, and Enkakuji was built, and he brought all these treasures, these beautiful books. And he had a sort of association with the disasters of things, because he was doing interviews with one of his students, and they looked across the great river, and there was a fire across the great river, which are the campfires of Genghis Khan's troops. And he said, put out that fire across the river. It's like, put out the suffering of the world, put out the chaos of the bad leadership and war and greed and all that, put out that fire. And it became a koan, put out the fire. But he came to Japan and bought these books, and was, by all accounts, a remarkable person, but he didn't speak Japanese, and most of his students didn't speak Chinese. And so there are sort of, but sometimes they'd make literal notes of what it sounded like, what he was asking for, and later on someone would look up them, and they were thinking, these are the secrets of the Dharma, but he'd be saying something like, can I have some water? So, which he didn't get, of course, because they didn't understand him. So here's the story of and then some generations later, there was a master called Fumon. When Enkakuji temple was destroyed by fire in 1374, the entire library was consumed, and the great books which the founder Bukko had brought from China were reduced to ashes. Priests of the Hachiman shrine came to Enkakuji, concerned about the tragic loss of these ancient texts. Fumon, the master, said, none of the texts has been burnt. Then where are they? Asked a priest doubtfully. The teacher drew a circle and said, they're in here. Then where are they? And one of them said, would you show us the tongue edition of the Mahavairochana Sutra? Would you show us the tongue edition of the Mahavairochana Sutra? And they're looking around at the desolation, the ash and the burned beams of the temple. Where is this sutra? So would you show, where are they? Well, the first time the priest said, well, let me start again. Fumon said, none of the text has been burned. Then where are they? Asked a priest doubtfully, looking around at the ashes and the burned lumber. The teacher drew a circle and said, "They're in here." The priest did not understand, and one of them said, "Would you show us the tongue edition of the Mahavairochana Sutra?" The priest held up one hand. Another priest asked, "Please show us the translation of the Sutra of the Brahma King's Doubt." Again, the teacher held up a hand. You can see where Hachiman caught it from, held up a hand. A Confucian scholar asked to see a copy of the Zen comments of Sutung Po and the Confucian classics. And the master again held up one hand. Then a Shingon teacher said, "We came here concerned that the ancient texts had been lost in the fire, but you told us they were not lost. But when we asked to see them, you held up your hand. What is this supposed to mean?" The master said, "The covers were burned, but the texts were unharmed. The sutras were unharmed." So it's kind of what we get in life, isn't it? We get to take refuge in the vastness, and everything else changes and burns and so on. So I think one of the nice things about living in Northern California is we have some sort of feeling for fire. And I come from Australia, where that means it's doubled. So, and apparently I gave a talk on this after the Paradise Fire, like a few years ago, when the little town of Paradise was burned completely. And people died, some people escaped, but you get in your car to drive out and you can't see a thing because of the smoke, and so people were trapped in their cars, and people ran along the cars, and a couple of people found a fire engine and jumped in the fire engine. A lot of people didn't find anything and died, And so I was looking up fires, and Tokyo had a great fire in medieval times when so a priest was burning a robe, a kimono that was believed to be possessed, because it was a very luxurious, beautiful kimono, and 3 young girls had in succession been given it but died before they could wear it. And so he decided he would burn it. But it was a very dry time, the wind was blowing, and the fire took off and burned downtown Tokyo, and so Tokyo, and this was just before, so Tokyo was sort of rebuilt along less medieval lines after that. And I was just reading about the Great Fire of London. Samuel Pepys, who was Secretary of the Navy, left a journal of it. And he had gotten a message from the king, I guess. Could he find the Lord Mayor and ask him to pull down the houses that were in the way of the fire so that they wouldn't catch fire and then spread to the next houses and so on. And Pepys went down to find him, and he found the mayor, and everything was in chaos, and people were trying to get the gear out of their houses, but they weren't trying to pull them down, And it was right on the side of the river, and they were throwing their gear in lighters and small boats in the Thames. And so he said to the mayor, we've got these orders we need to pull down the house. And he said, I've been pulling some down, and it just jumps the gap, and I can't get people to pull them down anymore. and he said, well, do you want troops? He said, troops won't help. And he said, you know what I'm doing? I've been up all night. I'm going to bed. So the mayor went to bed. And the Great Fire burned medieval London, basically. And then it was a sad thing, and it must have been like that in Tokyo too. because then the people who lived in those houses, they're all poor houses crammed together, then if they survived the fire, then they didn't survive afterwards. They died of starvation or exposure, and they had nowhere to live. So a tremendous transformational thing. So things change. We lose things, and there's a part of us wants to turn back and get them back, but we can't. I saw this great. I was told about this great story about someone had a computer problem, and they called the computer repair people because her computer had crashed and she had 9,000 tabs open on Safari or Chrome or whatever. 9,000 tabs, that's a lot. And the computer crashed. And they said, well, we'll come and help. She said, no, I'm too busy restoring the tabs. And it's like you'll never get those tabs back. It's like after something's burned, you'll never get it back. And the knowledge of that is actually all right. I remember when Fire Maps told me my house was burned, and this was just before the Paradise Fire, and I was up in the Himalayas in a temple, and I managed to go down from the temple where I got a phone call through one of those weird ghost satellite things. I got a phone call in the temple telling me to evacuate, but not telling me why. And so later that night, I managed to get down, and maybe it was the next day, to a hotel, and got Wi-Fi, and found out, oh, indeed, there was a big fire in Santa Rosa, and burned Glen Ellen, burned around Snow Mountain over to me, and then it burned down the other side from Calistoga down, and burned people's houses, and my house was bang in the middle of everything's burned. I don't know. I didn't know whether I believed it or not, but there we were. But I kind of did, and I thought, oh, and I remember feeling, that's all right. I have a whole life I didn't expect. I don't have the burden and the heavy pack of the life I expect. And so that's something. When everything is wiped away. People have often spoken to me about this. I had a friend who was getting in a car to go on a long summer vacation, and she and her whole family were in the car. And as they're driving out the driveway, they turned back, and the whole house was in flames. Something had happened with the boiler or the heater or something, and the whole house was in flames. And there was clearly nothing they could do. And she said, it felt all right. It felt good. I don't have to live the life that that house prepared was full of the stuff for my life, And you'll notice this. You don't have to restore those tabs. So we found that a lot. So when you meditate, it's more or less, we start to notice the heart mind. And it's a funny thing, but it goes on. And it goes on and on. It's always doing things. I don't know what it's doing. My mind thinks it's doing, but it's sort of, offering me, popular songs. This might suit the occasion. This might be right for your mood today. Or plans, or maybe I should look at my phone now because I think I heard a message, or things like that. And we know that we don't really need to look at the phone, or we don't really need to worry about our plans right now. We're meditating. And what are we doing when we're meditating? I don't know, but that's what we're not doing. We're not doing that stuff. And then we say to ourselves, well, what's the harm in it anyway? So meditation is really nice because we don't do the things the mind always does. We don't do the songs. We don't do the mood. I'm too depressed to, whatever it is, do my work, do my relationship, do my whatever. certainly too depressed to do zazen. So whenever we do zazen, we find out our opinions don't matter, and there are certain sort of the streams of thought, the streams of feeling just go on. But then there are, in zazen, you notice there are gaps, and they're not there. And those gaps are kind of precious, actually. Not if we cling to them, because then we turn them into something, but we notice that the deeper you are in the world of zazen, the more free you get, because there are more of those gaps. In the gaps, you don't have to keep up with your plans. You don't have to be disappointed in someone. You don't have to disapprove of someone. You don't have to disapprove of yourself. Who you are is all right. It's enough. And so it's like the fire has burnt it all. Or the fire of consciousness has burned itself out from it. And you have this spaciousness and freedom. And if you go into the space, like right now, if you go into the now, it's here, so we must be able to go into it. Chances are you can find it if it's here. So if you go into it right now, without a motive, without a plan or a scheme, you notice that it's at peace. And that peace sort of spreads out to the solar system, over the whole earth, they used to say. Comes out of your own breast and covers heaven and earth. And you'll feel that peace. And sometimes, we spend a lot of time dividing the world into this is good and this is bad, this is good news, this is bad news. And you realize that's all nonsense. Here we are. And what you thought was bad news, it's fine. You're at peace. What you thought was good news, you don't have to run around about it. It's fine. You're at peace. And to be at peace is a vast and wonderful thing. So let's just have it for a bit right now. Peace. Allison, do you have anything you want to say?
During the meditation, I kept thinking or seeing the image that was sent out with the announcement for this Sunday of the was actually it's from a collection in the Met Museum, and it's a Japanese fragment of a Japanese scroll that was the Flower Garland Sutra. It's from about 1,300 years ago. It was painted in Japan in the city of Nara at a temple. And it was apparently during that time they would use, it was just one of the first examples of where they would use precious metals to paint the calligraphy. So the calligrapher had silver in his brush, and he painted on hand-dyed indigo paper. And so it's this incredibly precious sutra. And they had a fire in about 1,300 years ago, and the fire of Nara in the temple. And the temple burned, but the edge of the sutra burned, and the rest of it was saved. So this apparently became, and it increased the preciousness of the document that the edge was burned. It seemed to them, the monks, to convey the experience of things appearing and disappearing simultaneously. And so I was thinking about that and the kind of the beauty of the actual physical beauty of that piece of art and the singed edges. And then I was thinking about San Ysidro Canyon, where I used to live and would go hiking for the last 40 years or more often, and how the chaparral in a way, the chaparral holds inside of it fire. You can feel fire inside the chaparral, even when it's completely green. I mean, you'll see also some trees that have bits of burned uh, uh, memories of old fires. You'll see that in the redwoods too. But even more than that, every fire season, you can feel like they just want to explode into fire. And um, so a few years ago, about 6 years ago, they had the Thomas fire, and the chaparral actually did completely ignite and burn. I happened to be not in Santa Barbara at the time. I was in Northern California on the coast. It was during my winter break, and my house was right on the edge of the chaparral, so I didn't know if my house had burned or not. But I found out it did not burn because I had a landline, and I called my own phone, and I picked up, So I knew that my house had not burned. And so when I drove home that day or the next day, I remember getting off the freeway and seeing for the first time the whole Front Range, San Ynez Range, which basically just felt like my home, and everything was gone. It looked like it had snowed, like there was a dusting of snow. The whole Front Range was just dusted with this white powder, and I was so overcome with grief that I couldn't drive. And so I pulled over to the side of the road and just wept and wept and wept. And then finally recovered enough to drive like the next 6 blocks to my house. But there was a roadblock there, and they wouldn't let me back in, the police, to my house. And so I roll down the window, and the policeman takes one look at me, and I say, "I just live right there." And he said, he sees these tears streaming down my face. He says, "Go ahead, don't tell anyone." And so I think the thing is that feeling of the fire that is running through and burning through every moment. The fire of transformation is, you can be afraid of it, but then with some kind of practice, it's the feeling of, John was saying something about, you take refuge inside the actual fire of transformation. And then you can live through every moment and not be afraid, and in a way just hold the absolute blaze of what it's like to be here, what it's like to be inside this kind of marvelous moment. That's it.
Aha. See, that's the kind of fire too. You can't get back your voice. Todd Geist, do you have anything to say? Fire's lost.
Hello there.
I mean, in software you can just have a fire, can't you? Like you go
yes, you can.
Everything goes.
Yeah, I live in Southern California, so we have fires, and you'd probably hear a few. If anybody in California, the image of fire is pretty strong. We had a fire about 12 years ago here, and one of the things I love about California and in this area, and really the whole state and anywhere these trees exist, are these massive oaks. I live in a town called Thousand Oaks, which is named after these trees that just have this just incredible shape, and they're just one of my favorite things. And after the fire, as soon as we could get back into the area, I went to find my favorite little grove where there were these big oaks, and if you've been in this kind of country, you've seen this, where you come around a bend and you walk into this this cathedral of oaks on either side and this huge canopy, and it just felt like this very magical place. And I loved going there, and it had survived, or it appeared to survive. But over the next 10 years since then, all but one of the trees has died, and as they've succumbed to the drought and the fire, and but there's one big giant one left. And whenever I would go past there, which is quite frequently, I'd often feel pretty sad and sense of loss that I'll never see that area again like that. Like it's transformed. Yesterday, I was on a hike with some friends who were visiting from out of town, and they had not been to this area. And we walked into this magical place, and this one big tree was there. And I started to say like, oh, this place is really beautiful, but you just can't imagine how beautiful it was and how sad it is that it's gone. And I realized I couldn't really believe myself. Like, it really was beautiful. This tree, the one tree that was there, was still just magnificent. It's like, looks like a mountain. Those oak trees, they're so solid, and the bark is so solid. It feels almost like stone. And there's this beautiful tree, and there's a creek flowing, and everything is lush and green again. And I just I couldn't be sad anymore. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Tess Beasley.
I was really moved during the meditation when you kept saying you can't go back. You kept having a refrain, different things that you can't go back. And I don't live in California, but I have other risks to not being able to go back. Recently, I had a conversation with a family member that felt like one of those great fires just sort of erupted and burned everything between us. And it's been interesting because initially there was a kind of devastation. It's interesting to hear the language everyone's talking about, a kind of devastation that things have been lost. And yet, you kept saying, John, right before the meditation, that there's a kind of freedom of not having to carry or not having to account for or having to even in any way take into account all the things that were being preserved to that point, or being cared for, or being defining the space between us. And it still feels very much things are scorched and it's very uncertain, but there's something that remains. I've been very struck by how much I can feel that there's something still living that still remains, not only in me, but as part of the whatever exists between us. And so there's a kind of, as I'm hearing this today, there's a kind of resting and trusting in that, the part that stays, to just see what wants to return. So, thanks.
Thanks. Yes, there's something in all human matters. Matsu said, since the beginning of time, no one has ever fallen out of Buddha nature. No matter what you do, how messed up you are, whatever stunts people pull on you, nonetheless, here we are. The sutras are unharmed. Very good. I'm going to ask somebody I don't know. And so, Dan Gallagher, do you have anything you would like to say?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Definitely.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't have anything particular that I want to say. But when you were talking about fire, I was reminded of a couple of things. One of them was the Kalpa fire. There's a koan about the great Kalpa fire, and yeah, it's beautiful and all consuming. It's there's just that. And then when Allison was talking, I thought about the plants that rely on fire. That fire is so often seen as a destructive force, and it frequently is. But there's also these plants that that need the fire in order to propagate. That they thrive on fire. So I guess, yeah, sometimes we thrive on fire, but thank you very much.
Thanks. Nice to hear. Bring your voice in, Dan. Thank you, Daniel. Yeah. Little wildflowers that come up after fire, all that. Lonnie, do you have anything you want to say?
Well, I'm loving it, and something is percolating in me about loss of loved ones. And how lovely to think that the cover burns, but the rest is still here. And I don't know that I can put it into words yet, but there's something so striking me about the constant manifestation and transformation of every single thing. And how easy it is to want to hold on to it, but how extraordinary it is that we come and go, and what a miracle that makes of us being here.
Thank you, Lonnie. It's a marvelous true, we're going to go into our last vows, but it's a marvelous true thing that we stop running around and waving our arms. We really are at peace. It's just such a great thing. I keep having to explain it to myself. Hang on, John. You're already free. Oh, really? Yeah, thanks. And then I start running around after something again. So that's how it is, eh? Thank you for joining me in this way. It's a marvelous thing. And just the great happiness in having a community to sit with. Yeah.